Hello and welcome back to Mate's Tottenham blog and to another episode of the Tottenham Fan Voice podcast. Today I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Chris from the Redmen TV, Stephen from Esteemed Kompany and NiiNii from Blue Lions TV for a title race debate. As you can see, no Arsenal fan here today. I think we all understand why. We're going to be talking about the teams, the managers, the history, the form, absolutely everything as we put our own argument forward for why we think our teams will win the Premier League. If you're new to the channel, make sure to go down and hit subscribe below, and we have memberships on the channel now as well. Thank you very much to the 3 members that have already signed up. Go down and hit join button. Everything will be explained there for you if you are interested. And I suppose we should just dive straight into things, and I think we'll all agree one of the key things to talk about with regards to this title debate is, and I'm sorry to bring it up straight away, Chris, but the injuries suffered by Liverpool in the last month or so. It's a big talking point. We've seen Van Dijk potentially out for the season. Joe Gomez injured now as well. We've Thiago out maybe till the new year, and smaller injuries to Alisson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. Chris, it has to be a massive concern for you with regards to the season ahead.
Yeah, it's massive. We're at the point of the season, aren't we, where the games are only just starting to come thick and fast, and yet they've been coming thick and fast in normal seasons. This is the period where you start to struggle and stuff. I mean, there's been something like 16% more muscle injuries this season alone, and at this point in this season and stuff. And, you know, Liverpool's injuries have obviously hurt them. I still think we've got a good chance, by the way, of doing something in this league. And, I think the fact that we've qualified for the Champions League means we get a little week off now. Look, there's quite a few good sides in this league now. I think Liverpool at the start of the season were head and shoulders above all of them, if I'm perfectly honest. And listen, people disagree, whatever. But the injuries has brought it all back together and given other teams a chance to go and win this league.
Yeah, for definite. I think you've gotten lucky with how players like Nat Phillips and Curtis Jones have stepped up into the first team. You know, Jones scoring a big goal for you in the Champions League the other night. Other players have struggled, like Nico Williams had a difficult game last week against Brighton. But we can definitely see with those players the quality is there. Stephen, do you think for Liverpool going into the season that it in a way it could be a good thing having these young players step up into the team straight away? And a massive statement from them last week and going out and beating Leicester 3-0, even though they haven't been as great since. Would you be concerned as a City fan that Liverpool could still be difficult to catch this season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's controversial. Like what Chris said, I think Liverpool were ahead of everyone else at the start of the season. I think City, we started not a little bit worse than what most City fans would expect, but not a million miles off, to be honest, given the fact, there's none of these are excuses, by the way. They're just attempt to explain them always. Given the fact that obviously we didn't play David Silva, obviously we weren't really sure about how viable Diaz would be as a company replacement, so we're a little bit skeptical about that. Fernandinho getting older, Aguero was injured, Gabriel Jesus was injured at the start of the season. I think City fans were expecting a slow start, and probably it has been a little bit slower. And Liverpool. I mean, the thing about Liverpool is that they're in a place where it felt like City were in the 17, 18 or 18, 19s when they've got a system that really works and no one that kind of needs replacing. Whereas City were kind of doing that and probably realising, shit, we're going to have to replace Fernandinho, Silva, Aguero and company soon, which was always the kind of thing that was hanging over us and is kind of slowly started to catch up with us. Liverpool, though, obviously, the thing about them is I still think they'll be up there as well. I think they've got so many good players that even if they are playing some kids, and even though the kids occasionally will kind of drag them through and get through, they will obviously make mistakes because they're young. It's going to happen. But I still think they'll win more games than they lose or draw because they are such a well-refined machine. They've got the kind of individual quality that means if you can keep it, relatively tight, Salah's going to pop up or Mane's going to pop up and bang it in the back of the net. But I do think this season, even though I think it'll be the usual suspects at the top, I do think there's room for optimism for pretty much anyone, sat at the table currently. Any of us, we've got reasons to find an argument to suggest that any team could win the league at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you touched on it there with Liverpool. They still have those game changers like Mohamed Salah, Sadio Mane, and Diogo Jota, who's been one of the signings of the season for me. Had a really, really good start at Liverpool. He's breaking records there already. NiiNii, they have these players who can change these games, but as I touched on there with Nico Williams, they also have players who an individual mistake can really cost them. And I think with Liverpool last season, I think a lot of people would agree. You might not, but in the football that they played, the style, the quality, you didn't exactly set the world alight. I think there was 14 games where you won by a 1-goal margin. Could those players, NiiNii, that could throw away these games, could that be a big concern for Liverpool this season, do you think?
Of course, naturally comes down to lack of experience. Like for me personally, it's never going to sit right with me when a young player's getting scapegoated and targeted. Come on, you're going to feel the pressure a bit. It's not the same when you're training with these guys and then playing in a real game. So I understand the criticism Nico is getting, but for me, it doesn't really sit too right with me. I'm sure give him some time and patience, which us fans, we never have for our club or our team. I'm sure that he'll be a better player for this experience in the future. But I mean, the main reason why Liverpool are so great, and I got to say, obviously, the fan part of me, I don't want to praise Liverpool for anything, but obviously just seeing how they've really, had a plan, had a strategy, and seeing that synergy from the top to the bottom, that's how you get success in football. And spending responsibly in the markets too, signing the right players that are needed, not signing anyone for the sake of it. And of course, when you have a system and style that complements the players you have, and you only have a great coach that knows how to develop players as well as drill them as well, then of course, when you're in situations where you have injuries to some key players, as long as the foundations are still there in the team, you're still going to be able to challenge and keep that momentum going. So I think for me, Liverpool could be tested this period because I think, as Klopp was saying in that game against Ajax, he doesn't have any time to really rest any of his big players. There's no time to do that. He's forced to have to keep playing them. So for me, with how congested this month is going to be now and going into the future, that could be an area in which Liverpool could slip up in fatigue, basically.
Definitely, and I agree with you.
Chelsea fan having to say slip up there, didn't he? And instantly, I'm back to Gerrard again.
I'm not going to object to that.
Very sly then.
I had to throw that in
But
there.
I just little shout out on Nico though. Like, he's 19 years old, mate. He's also not like, I think a youngster can come into a footy side right at any point and perform really well if they're given the foundations. But a youngster coming into a side when there's 5, 6, 7 changes, that's a completely different scenario to just coming in with the first team. Like, and he's had to delete his social media at points already this season because Liverpool fans have been having a pop at him, and it's ridiculous, to be honest with you. Dad played brilliantly the other night, and he didn't have a proper pre-season, and he got thrust into the limelight, and we've seen that happen. That can happen to young players all the time. And like, if you watch football, obviously we all love the game and stuff. And I think for me, over the last few years, I've kind of realised that the situation is just as important as the player himself. Like, there's not that much difference between the top players in the Premier League and the average players in the Premier League, but they might be coming into a better system, a better situation just in their life and all that type of stuff. And a manager who suits them more than another manager that they've had previously. There is such minute differences between whether you're considered world class or not, man. And this for Nico Williams might just not be a good situation right now. But the situation could be good in the future for him,
I feel like that's the exact perspective I've always had when I see football. And I think when you have it like that, when you just accept things for how they are, when you understand like how this game works, then you're not going to be someone that's going to be sending hate towards a 19-year-old because you're unhappy that you didn't perform in a game versus Brighton when you were hoping he would. So that's just the reality of the game, and I think sometimes that can be forgotten too much.
Yeah,
so look at Steve's got to play there, Phil Foden, right? And Guardiola's talked him up for so long, but he has kept his minutes so low until this season, hasn't he, Steve? Just making sure that he learns everything and putting him in the best position to succeed.
That's the thing, is like, people look at people like Phil Foden and you hear Guardiola saying this guy's brilliant, and they go, well, why aren't you playing him every week? Because it's not as simple as that, isn't it? Just because a guy is brilliant doesn't mean therefore he's ready to play every single week, or therefore he's ready to be under that microscope and that intense pressure that comes from the game, that comes from social media. So that's the one thing I think Guardiola's kind of known. It's been frustrating watching because you want to see this talent unleashed, but sometimes you think, well, maybe they're watching him in training and go, well, he's just not quite there yet. Doesn't mean he isn't fantastic, doesn't mean he doesn't have all the ability in the world. It just means that you're putting into such an intense environment that they have to be ready to nearly be flawless, because they will get absolutely crucified if not. And I think people forget about that not everyone can be a Trent Alexander-Arnold, or not everyone can be, I guess even a Phil Foden to an extent. Not everyone can look at home, and like Nico Williams is a good player, but we look at people like, I know this is a weird comparison, but look at someone like Darren Fletcher at United. Like, when he came through for United, he was literally just, United fans didn't really rate him that much. He was a squad player, he barely even played that much, but eventually over time, by the time he was like mid-20s, he got better and better and better and better. Jordan Henderson had a similar career, getting better and better slowly until he reach the level. And I think there's this kind of whole like boom or bust mentality with football fans where you have to be really shit hot now or you're nothing at all. And it just drives me mad because there's so much more nuance in football than that. And everyone's, development path, it's not like a linear curve upwards.
Exactly.
It's just, it takes a bit of time. Harry Kane's dodgy loans constantly before he broke through. I mean, people forget that. And they forget they're just humans as well, They're people. And it's just like, I think I get so frustrated watching people just, essentially just try and box off a player immediately. Like, they're doing it all the time. Like, even with City signings, they're doing it with players after. I mean, I've got these City fans now who are forgetting, that certain players, like there's a few, it's only a few, don't worry, but on social media some going, was Laporte that good? It's like, yes he was, he had a bad game, but it doesn't mean have you forgotten like 8 months ago, right? But the answer is they have, because people have such short memories because of social media, and it's just
and I think it's just how the game is marketed. I mean, let's say I wanted to watch a game from even 2 weeks ago, where am I going to go to see that game? There's nowhere to go, and we don't really place any value on history at all. It's all about the immediate game tomorrow, and then boom, distant memory onto the next one, and just this like never-ending grind that I don't know. A lot of times you can forget history, you can forget the things you've learned previously, and it just breeds this type of short-term thinking all the time. Short term, and I don't know. For me personally, I haven't been on social media as much because I'm fine. Just got a bit sick and tired of it, to be honest. The same cycle and repetition, and I'm not someone that does too well with repetition and that stuff anyway. So, it does get a bit disappointing. But I mean, for me, it's just even mad that at the end of the day, where's the logic in sending harassment and hate towards players that represent your club and your team? Just knowing the fact that you could affect his confidence in the next game, that could then affect your result that you want as a fan. So it's just these types of never-ending contradictions that just never make any sense to me.
It's absolutely stupid. You're supposed to be a supporter. That's all you're supposed to do. It's your one job. Just support.
Like, it was funny. It was actually funny. I was speaking to Simon Johnson before this, and he was telling a story about the Charlton fans that went to the game, I think, over the past few days. I think like a few thousand were there, and already there were people like coming out on TalkSport saying that they had to leave the game after like X, Y, Z minutes, and how the fans there boo the players off because they didn't win. So it's just like, irrespective of what's been happening in the world and the
fans are back. So tired.
Sums it up. Yeah.
I think people conflate what we're saying now as if you can't criticize a play. You can. It's just as ever in life with any situation at any point. It's not what you say; it's how you say it, and that's like it's like that. Your mum taught you that, or as a kid, but people forget that. It's like you can go to Nico Williams if you wanted to. You could be like, you tried really hard. Unlucky that the guy beat you, but you'll keep learning. You're young, you've got loads of potential. Keep working hard, and you'll go there. And he might be like, no, I'll read it, but it's fair at least. You know what I mean? Like, why can't people just aim for that? Not your shite, pal. And do you know what? It might be that he might never improve and get beyond that level, but he's been thrown into a situation that he never asked for. So, like, why criticize a man who's trying to do the best? Not even a man, a boy, at the times. Why criticize someone who has absolutely no say in the circumstances around him? It's just, I bet you're just moaning that people are idiots, but that's life, isn't it?
Yeah. I think fans really forget the effect that we can have on footballers. Footballers always come out and say, "Oh, I don't read the social media comments. They don't mean anything to me." I think for a lot of the part, they could be lying about that, but especially for these young players, because they've grown up on social media. Everything for them is on that. They don't have as many followers or whatever, so they will see the majority of things that are said about them. And you can look in the past, players like Ravel Morrison. He was this big up and coming star. He was built up as much as possible. He maybe had a few bad appearances, and straight away everyone jumping in his back. And I know there's a player more recently at Spurs, Marcus Edwards. You probably haven't heard of him, and that's kind of the point where I'm coming from. He's out in Holland at the moment, and I know Pochettino came out at one stage and said he was the next Messi. And it's the pressure that has been put on these players that it's impossible for them to cope with, because, like, at the end of the day, they are teenagers, young adults that just aren't used to this. And as you say, they are humans, and it is really easy to forget that. I think the best thing for Nico Williams is that he has a manager there like Jurgen Klopp, and a captain like Jordan Henderson, who will put their arm around his shoulder and talk to him and tell him what he needs to hear. And as well, he's someone there like Trent Alexander-Arnold, who we can look up to And Alexander-Arnold very recently, came into this first team, so he's in a position where he knows the kind of what Nico Williams is going through now in terms of becoming a really famous footballer, playing for one of the biggest teams in the world. So I think he's lucky that there are a lot of people there who can certainly help him through that. And Stephen, you touched on Phil Foden as well. For me, like I've said this quite a bit, he is outside of Spurs my favourite footballer. He is so technically gifted. He is an absolutely outstanding player. And a lot of people, as you say, gave Guardiola criticism of how he dealt with that in terms of integrating Foden into that first team. We're starting to see him get a lot more first team football, and he seems to be fitting in so well, complementing a lot of that squad. He's played a bit in the wing, mainly in the middle, but he just seems to be fitting in there so easily, and he doesn't seem out of place. I know that you've had a few injuries with Aguero and stuff like that, but in the midfield with the likes of Gundogan, Rodri, Kevin De Bruyne, he doesn't look out of place. You have to be so excited about not just him, but that entire squad.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have someone, one of our own. City, of all the criticisms we've had, I mean, to be honest, not been many, but one of the small criticisms we've had over the past few years is that we just not really had, one of our own, so to speak, come through. And it looks like that's changed now. And I'm delighted because Phil Foden is majestically talented. Like, honestly, he's ridiculously good, this kid. And obviously, there's still some rough edges there. He's only young still. But I think the biggest difference for Foden now is that he stops looking like someone who's in thrall to the rest of the team. He looks like someone who belongs there now. And he's also physically just a little bit bigger. You change a lot from 17 to 20 to 21, 20. Physically, he just looks a little bit broader. He's a little bit stronger. Initially, it was quite easy to lean on, and he'd fall down because he was only small. But now he's got a little bit of stockiness to his game. And he looks confident. He looks like he's, and the best thing about it, he looks like he's someone who's actually learning from the players around him. And when you consider who he's playing with, that's kind of a scary thought. He spent the last 3 or 4 years learning a little bit of wing play, maybe from Sane and Sterling. He's learning how to receive the balls in those little tight spaces, doing that kind of like very Spanish half turn, whether you receive the ball on the turn from David Silva. He's even getting the bit where he's crossing and passing a little bit like Kevin De Bruyne now. And he's always been a goal scorer and a dribbler anyway. So it's like he's picking up little bits of the game, and you can genuinely see his style of play from a year ago to now. It's already a little bit different. It's because he's finding his style. It's because he's learning from around them. And we could be looking at a guy here, and we've already seen him for England now do it as well, who could... I think I did a video at the start of the season for one of the kind of big channels where they do like get all the fans on, and I said Phil Foden's a 15 to 20 goal season player, and I kind of got mocked for that in the comments. I still stand by it. He is 100% a 15, 20 goal player, and maybe some seasons he'll be grabbing 20 plus because he's just a natural finisher. He's a naturally good, and I think Guardiola as well is he's still holding him back a little bit, and it's frustrating to watch as a fan because I think honestly he's our most creative player this season. But it's probably sensible, because I think you have to be a little bit tougher sometimes as a manager on the young players, and you have to pull them aside. It's where you got a puppy. The puppy's even harder to teach than a dog or something like that. But you have to be like, no, look, I know you misplaced the pass there. I wouldn't have a go Kevin De Bruyne for it because Kevin De Bruyne is Kevin De Bruyne and he's learned it. I told him, but you need to be more aware. So occasionally when Foden has a slightly lesser game, he's probably a little bit harsh on him, but it's probably because he needs to learn those lessons and he's still learning the way. It's frustrating to watch as a fan because you want him to play every single game, but you can still see he's improving. And I guess that's all that matters. His minutes are going up, he's improving. And I won't be surprised by the end of the season, we're looking at a guy who scored at least 10 goals in the Premier League and people are going, he's going to get better. And then 2 years from now, we're looking at someone who's genuinely one of the best attacking midfielders in world football. I already feel like he's on the way to that path. And I think he's probably be unstoppable, touch wood, in terms of how good he could potentially be, because special talent.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, for me, again, some people could disagree, but I put him up there in terms of potential with the likes of Kylian Mbappe and Erling Braut Haaland. Like, for a player so young, the technical ability that he does have, a lot of players do have to.
I think they do think they've done more than him, but of course they have. That's an undisputed fact. But I do think technically, there's no one who's got more technically than him at that age. I don't believe that's true. I mean, there's obviously people just as good, probably even potentially better currently, but in terms of pure technical ability, it's just ridiculous. His touch is just sublime.
Yeah, some of the touches he's come out with in the last couple of weeks, he's all seen him doing the rounds on Twitter. He had 1 or 2 with England. I think he won at City in the Champions League. It's amazing the way he can just pluck the ball out of the air. But look, we can't ignore the fantastic team that is around him. And City sitting is at 11th in the Premier League at the moment. I think their goal difference certainly helped a bit by that victory against Burnley last week. It was negative up until then. An outstanding squad there. And NiiNii, I think everyone is surprised at how City have started the season. Now, we do have to mention they've only lost 2 games, and it has been against Spurs and Leicester, 2 teams who do currently sit in the top 4. But are you concerned that City do have that ability just at any given moment to turn it on and really, really make a push up the table?
Yeah. I mean, of course, a team like Man City, individuals they have with Pep and the style of football. I mean, of course, you always have to have respect for them. But obviously, Stephen, would you say that maybe the lack of preseason really slowed down Man City at the start of the season? Because I do feel that, at the start of the season, teams were giving away penalties left, right, and centre. The score lines were crazy. And for me, it was obviously down to the fact that players aren't fully fit. The intensity is not consistent throughout the 90 minutes. And it's no surprise why we're seeing so much craziness. But I mean, recently now, score lines, every single week are a lot more, competitive now. So I do, maybe Man City really struggle from that at the start.
Well, for me, I mean, I think as ever in life, it's a number of factors. Some factors are probably more than others. Factors I don't really know the exact answer. I've looked at it a lot, because I make videos about City, talk about City every single day, and so you start to try and look for patterns. And it's probably a factor of the preseason thing. I'm not going to use it as an excuse because everyone's in the same boat. Some teams have had more or less than others. But of course, it'd be a factor. I mean, I think one of the reasons why it could potentially, might not be, but could potentially be a factor for City more than some other teams is because I think City probably need to change a little bit because obviously it didn't work last season. And it's that one-to-one time. And I think it was Ruben Diaz saying the other day that he just doesn't really feel like he's had a training session, with a City team yet. And obviously that stuff matters. And Guardiola, love him or hate him, I think we all know he's a very kind of controlling manager. He's obviously about that that very precise kind of tactical awareness. Everything's kind of a well-oiled machine. Everyone knows what they're doing. All the gears are turning at the same time. And I think that comes from just training ground work. Now, I'm not moaning about it, but I think I think it's probably reasonable to say that City, like a lot of teams, have a lot less time in the training ground at the moment. So I do wonder if the team hasn't been quite as well oiled because of that. And that might have not as given the time to try and find new ways of creating chances because we've been a bit poor in front of goal. Whereas previously we would have probably just relied on David Silva being there and having that fluidity. David Silva, Kevin De Bruyne can do it regardless of who they're playing against. But he's not there now, so we've had to find a new way to play it with no time to play it. I mean, not worries us, because that's just life. Maybe it's a case as well as we haven't had the quality on the pitch at times. Obviously, we haven't replaced David Silva. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's we've not been good enough. Maybe Guardiola wasn't really focused until recently because obviously there was a whole thing about him extending his contract. And I think about a year ago, actually started last season, Guardiola quite famously said among City fans, right, they've earned my respect now, the players. I'm not going to be quite as tough on them because they've earned my respect. And previously he was like, "Oh, you're tired? Fuck you." That's an actual quote in training, And I think I think basically City fans were a little bit concerned by that at the time. And last week, after one of the Champions League games, someone asked him, is Laporte rested, obviously. And Guardiola said a quote, and I've actually got it up from a previous video still. But he said, but right now I use players who are in better conditions or more focused. If the players think they've been rested because I'm rotating, they've made a big mistake. And it was the first time in ages we've seen Guardiola go nah, you got to play for your shirt. And he hasn't been like that for a while. He's been a little bit softer with them. And I wasn't sure if it was because of life and because of everything going on. But I feel like at the moment he's recently, the attitude does seem to have changed on the pitch a little bit. City have stopped conceding goals. You got 6 clean sheets in 8. The players are giving a little bit more intensity. It could simply be because, obviously they're getting into the rhythm and got a bit of fitness now in terms of, players are coming back from injury. We had a very injury-laden start to the season. But it could be also that he's signed a contract and gone, right, I'm here for another 2.5 years now. 2 seasons after this one, I've got to just start whipping these players again because they've been a little bit poor recently. So I think there's an element of just all of that combining to make City's start be a bit underwhelming.
That makes sense. I 100% agree. We always think that it's always one reason why success isn't there, but it's always different components that play a part that all add up and accumulate. So not replacing, not spending, not maybe having Phil Foden ready enough to replace David Silva was a mistake. Spending so long getting a replacement for Kompany and eventually getting Ruben Diaz, who looks very good by the way, but last season his replacement. Getting Rodri's good, but is he Fernandinho? Probably not.
Exactly.
And then you may be thinking up front with your attacking players, maybe you might even revamp. I mean, I know individually Bernardo Silva, Mahrez are great, but if there was a player on the market that could just change things up. Because I mean, the reality is when clubs are doing all their scout reports, whatever, they know these players inside and out. So I do think that over the years, if it's kind of the same type of style or play or the same limitation from a player, if they haven't improved, like Bernardo Silva, I was hoping he'd have more goals in this game by now after being in the Premier League for so long, and he still hasn't looked to have gone to that next level yet.
No, he dropped off a lot last year, and there's loads of reasons. It could be the whole social media for all, around the Mendy incident. It could be that. It could be, if so, that's his own problem. He's kind of got to get over it, really, to an extent. I mean, I understand that, but it's a long time ago now, and there was a notable dip round then. It could have been like he was tired and then that led into that. But either way, just get on with it, man. You're a professional footballer and life shit sometimes, whatever, but you have to get on with it. And you kind of learned a lesson there, just to maybe just shut up. Just don't use it.
There was a point. There was a point there, wasn't there, where I thought he was your best player at one point.
He was up for the Ballon d'Or. He literally wasn't. He was in the top 10. He was phenomenal. At the end of that 18-19 season, he was just ridiculously good, and he was up for all the Player of the Year awards in the Premier League, and he was in the top 10 for the Ballon d'Or because he went on for that season where he was winning everything domestically with Man City, and then obviously he was Portugal's best player in the Nations League as well as they won that, and he was brilliant. And then as he came back, I think he came back a bit tired. I think he did come back a bit tired and a little bit jaded. And then he had that Mendy tweet thing. And then he got very defensive because I think he didn't feel like he'd done anything wrong. Obviously he was insensitive, and I understand why. Yeah. He was like, he was one of those things where you go, oh, fuck's sake, man.
What it is? It's those ones where it's like, listen, when you've got like personal relationships with people, privately, people got to realize in the internet era, not everything has to go online. Just whatever nonsense you guys say together, just keep it private, And
I think he took it badly, basically. And I understood why he took it badly, but I didn't really agree with it. I think he has to be, to be honest, just get on with it and be all right, I didn't mean to offend no one. For where I am, that those things are on the shelves in shops still, literally. I apologize. I didn't mean to cause anyone offense. I understand it. If he'd just done that and got on with it, it'd be like everyone forgot it straight away. But he kind of doubled down and gone, and he did the whole if it had posted, this wouldn't have been. He just doubled down, and I think it was a really naive thing to do, unfortunately. But then, to be honest, even away from Bernardo, the one thing that I felt, and I've got the tweets to back it up, I was worried about striker this season because Aguero spent an awful lot of time injured, and he got a meniscus knee injury, which I think people know if you follow football, that's the one that's worrying. Very worrying because players they go, they're out for 4 weeks, but then they end up being out for 5 months all of a sudden because he just never goes, and he's injury prone anyway, Aguero. So I was really worried that he spent a lot of time on the sidelines, and so far that seems to be pretty accurate. And he looked a bit slower towards the end of last season anyway. I was thinking, is he going to be right this season? And Gabriel Jesus, obviously, he's good. Not clinical, though. He's very good. I love the guy for his effort, his work rate, his link.
He hasn't stepped up, Jesus, I've been hoping. Yeah.
He hasn't taken the next step yet. So I was hoping in the summer, if we weren't going to use the very talented Liam Delap, who's only 17 to be fair, if we weren't going to use him, which didn't seem plausible anyway, I was hoping we'd get someone like Cavani, genuinely. I wanted a short-term striker signing, and I still feel that way, and it's annoying when you're like, I was right, because we went for a while where we were playing Ferran Torres. He's been pretty good so far. I like a lot, but he was like a 20-year-old from another country. He's a winger playing through the middle, and that was never going to be a solution. As good as he was in some games, it wasn't obviously going to be. It's not going to be Aguero or Gabriel Jesus there. We had both out for a while, so I feel like there's been a little bit of poor kind of planning because if fans can see things. I know it's not as simple as that because it's hard to kind of solve the problems, and it's obviously a lot of money and stuff. But I do think sometimes City are a little bit too. I don't think they see some things sometimes. I think there's a little bit of confidence there, which can also occasionally blind them. Which I guess we all agree up to that.
It's potentially 3 years on the bounce, though, isn't it? Where something like this has happened. You think of the spine of that team from when you first, won the league and all that type of stuff, and the players that everyone at your side learned from, Kompany, David Silva, Aguero. These are the lads that you haven't replaced. And, I can see, the mad thing is, last season it was dead annoying for me as a Liverpool fan watching City and City fans going, but we haven't replaced Kompany. Well, you knew for a fucking year, lads, that he was going to be leaving the football club. It's not an excuse. It's like, why didn't we win the league in 18-19? Because we didn't replace Gerrard 6 years before. It's bullshit. You know what I mean? It's just not one of them things. You've got to do that. And we might be in that situation a few years' time if Mane, Salah, Firmino, they're all the same age. So you've got to sort of get that young blood through. Maybe that's why we've signed Jota. It's madness, but that's what football clubs have got to do. And I think you're right, Steve. I think there was a little bit of overconfidence there that these lads will just be ready and not kind of realising just what you've got. You kind of almost undervalue how good those players were for you because you've seen it every day. Because you forget that these guys are just machines They're so many levels ahead from what you've already had.
All four of those key players are literally some of the best in their position in the Premier League history. I mean, I genuinely believe that's true. Like, Kompany, one of the best centre backs to ever play in the English game. It's just a matter of fact, in my opinion. Aguero, arguably the greatest Premier League striker of all time. One of the best in the history of the game. Fernandinho was sensational as a holding midfield for us. You won't get the credits of Keane, Gerrard, and a lot. You would never get that. I understand that, but it was fantastic, literally world class for us. And then once again, David Silva, possibly the greatest attacking midfielder in the history of the Premier League. So possibly, So these are genuinely three of them will go down as iconic players in the Premier League era. Fernandinho won't get that. I understand it because he's not got the headlines, but three of them will go down as all-time greats in the Premier League. And we've been, it's not easy. For one, it's not easy to replace them. I think we all know that. Right. It's impossible. It's possible to try and replace it. But I do think, if we'd just gone a bit more aggressive, actually, to be fair, if we'd gone more aggressive last season in trying to get our centre back, we would have Harry Maguire. So I'm kind of glad that didn't happen. If we'd got Ruben Diaz last season, and then it meant we would have had this money now to try and replace David Silva, get someone like Husam in, or maybe to get another striker in who could have been the long-term, replacement for Aguero. Because everyone's like, we got two strikers. I was like, it doesn't work that way. One's going to be injured all the time. We know that. Yeah. But less about City anyway. Go on. I could rant all day about City.
You know what? Let me just add this on real quick. But I think, as you were saying, Aguero, Fernandinho, Silva, Kompany, these are, absolute legends in the Premier League. And this has been something I've had a feeling about with most of the big clubs, because now, we're approaching the era where these greats are becoming seniors and they're about to finish their careers soon. And now what are the big clubs like Bayern, Juventus, Barcelona, Madrid, how are they going to replace that guaranteed quality, that world-class quality that had mastered their game and were ready to just, play in their full prime? You can't do that if you're signing a 21-year-old or 22-year-old, because they're going to need a few years just to get to achieve their levels. So I do think that maybe City are one of the first big clubs to suffer from that, because we always think turning to the market is an easy solution, but it really isn't when you're negotiating and assessing transfers, and when every big club looks at the same players too as well to make it even more difficult too. It is hard. So I do think that most teams, Man City in particular, it's natural to have transition years of at least 1 or 2 seasons. This gives time for the younger players like the Fodens, Torreses, etc., to grow and feel that responsibility now, because that torch is being passed down now to the younger players, and that takes time to happen. So I think with us, on the other hand, we've always suffered from transition years by we're trying to replace all the ones with younger players. It never works, and I don't think I've ever seen an example ever where I've ever seen a team replace, quality experience with, new signings or younger players and still continue that momentum. I just don't think it works like that. So I guess, I don't know, if it's a transition year, I guess maybe it's interesting to look at how the young players are going to cope this season. How are they going to improve, with their mentality, their fitness, their in-game moments, etc., etc. And I just think it's just a natural byproduct when you're trying to move on from your Agueros, Silvas, etc., etc.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's strange being in a situation when you have a team who do spend as much money as Man City to be able to in a way criticize their transfer strategy, but I think everyone knows that there are players there that haven't been replaced, and that could definitely be what is costing City. But I think if there's something that Chelsea and Spurs have proven this season, it's not about how much you spend, it's about how you spend it. I think Chelsea, for me anyway, have one of the most balanced squads we've seen from them in a while. Really clever business bringing in Thiago Silva. I think it was a move that a lot of people questioned before the season started. That's proven to be a great buy. Edouard Mendy, one that was brought in a bit later in the window, has been a fantastic addition. The record he has so far in terms of clean sheets is outstanding. NiiNii, how excited are you about this squad that Lampard has put together? And as I say, the balance that is in there.
I mean, I keep saying it all the time. It feels surreal because I've always had a vision that my club was going to finally understand what we had to do to finally be like a big team on the rise now. I feel like over the years we've gone for short-term managers because, I don't know, maybe people at the boards, I look at a lot of board people, ex-bankers, lawyers, whatever. I mean, yeah, they're smart people, but, football intelligence, understanding the sport is completely different to their expertise. Of course, they'd be going for short-term because, that's what they mentalities are on. So it took something as drastic, because, it always takes something super drastic in life for, people to realize, okay, now this is how we do things properly. And that was a transfer ban which came at the perfect time for us, because, for me, the reason why I knew we were going to be a success was because I'd already seen glimpses of this with our academy. People, I think if you're not really too invested in what was happening, you'd assume that, okay, we're winning because we just have the best young players. But no, it was never about that. It was about the coaching we had. Let's not forget, so many coaches at Chelsea have gone on to be managers, coaches at other clubs as well. And we were just passing down that mantle of, that continued success. And in fact, the reason why our academy model was so successful was because, in a sense, we had created our own identity with them, our own structure, our own philosophy. We introduced many modern footballing principles which are benefiting us now, because when you're looking at your Reece James, your Mason Mounts, players that can play numerous positions to a high level, great tactical understanding, great individual ability, playing at speed as well. You can see what the vision, what the plan was to begin with. So when Lampard came, I knew exactly what was going to happen, because it was always about implementing the success with the academy to the first team. And to do that, we had to break down what that success was and then how to transfer that. And that was the philosophy. And, the best way to do that was to have guys from our academy become the new focal point in the team.
And a transfer ban definitely, yeah.
I think the ban definitely helped, because I think things would have been different. I think maybe Sarri might have stayed. I mean, there was talks that Sarri was looking at, his size from Napoli, which the club were even entertaining talks over for like 45 million. And you have Reece James, who at the time, you just knew that this guy was one of the most special fullbacks in the country coming through. So it was this types of, super contradictions all the time that's always been stopping us. But now we have men at the club who've been with us before. We have the boards have confidence in them and respect them, which is the most important thing. And because Lampard's got a team from the coaches that have been right through grassroots, Pajak now, who is a former player who has expertise and respect as well. We finally got the building blocks ready that I think you need to move on to become a successful team now. And in Lampard's first season, there were issues. And for me, it's very easy why he couldn't show the football we're playing now last season. Oh, sorry, I'll let you.
No, I'm saying, what does success look like for Chelsea this season? Because obviously, I mean, don't worry, I'm not criticising it, because glass house, stones and glass houses and all that kind of stuff. But you spent a lot of money, this summer. Like, you bought an awful lot of players and you spent aggressively, and it looks like it could kind of pay off for you guys. But what does success look like? Because when you spend that much money, I mean, there's obviously increased pressure. I mean, I guess from at least some people, if not yourself personally, can you finish fourth again? Really, is that acceptable? Do you have to challenge for the title? Especially given Liverpool's and City's current situation, which obviously can be assessed during the season. I mean, I just want to know what success looks like for Chelsea this season. I mean, because obviously there'll be knives out if you're not right at the very top from some people, from some fans. Whereas I know yourself was quite measured and stuff like that. But I just wonder what you reckon to that.
I think, to be honest, the success depends on what the requirements were from the board. And this entire time, there's been a 3-year plan. So actually next season is when, for me, I'm going to be really, really critical about what's happening, because that's when we're supposed to see things. I mean, right now, considering how COVID has affected preseason, considering the amount of new signings coming in, you're getting used to the country, the league, etc., and knowing how the board, I feel, have their understanding's grown. They know now. Okay, some of these things that we wanted before, we used to get from the short-term managers, but in the long term, they used to completely ruin us to a point where, we even got a transfer ban. So, right now, I know the players, they feel that they can win the league, but I think it's just about taking it game by game. Yeah. Keep the momentum going, getting them 3 points.
I'll tell you, my thing with Chelsea is, right, because I agree with everything that you've said, NiiNii. I do, 100%. And actually, I can kind of get behind this Chelsea side and what they're kind of standing for right now. What I hated about Chelsea, apart from the rivalry that we had in the sort of mid-noughties, was how the football club was run and how they kind of did the money and all that type of stuff. And it's a jealousy as well. It's a hatred that's born out of jealousy. Let's get that on the table as well. But you can understand what they do. My thing is, do we know that Abramovich isn't going to get bored of this? because you haven't had a 15-game streak yet where the results haven't been there, and you might not get that, but I'm just a little bit unsure whether he just sticks with it. But maybe it's because it's Lampard and stuff like that, and fair enough. And secondly, on them as well, they've been well better than I thought they were going to be this season. Like, I thought they were going to be a thing at the end of the year where you sort of get to like February, March, and they sort of start to hit the ground running, and then you get a little bit scared for next season. Like, the fact that they're already up there with all these new players proper worries me. Like,
it's funny though, isn't it? Because you're saying that, but then, I mean, I'm not denying it, but like, I think no one's been great so far. You know, it's like the Chelsea won half their games, which is like, it's decent, but it's not like, you know, obviously you've only lost one as well, of course. But I think what I'm saying by that is like Chelsea haven't even had to be brilliant to be in the top, which is probably why it's a good thing for you as well, NiiNii, because obviously like you probably got a way to go yet, even though you probably will get better because Ziyech will come in and get more adapted. He already started to look pretty good, and obviously Havertz will start to adapt even more. So you've not even been like, I would say, incredible yet, and you're still right near the top. And you know you've only had to win half your games and to be up there. And so I think probably is a room for like encouragement for you, because like I don't think it's not going to be a 100-point season. We all know that now already. It's going to be, you know, I would say mid-80s, I reckon, to win the league this year. And I don't see any reason why Chelsea can't do that, annoyingly, from my perspective.
I think that's it. I mean, you know, if you look at the interviews from the players, of course, they contradict what Lampard's saying. Lampard wants to keep things measured, but the players, you know, they're playing for us. You know, they want to win. They'll be winning things abroad. They'll be winning things during their youth team days. They're all winners. So, of course, that is going to be one of the aspects. And, you know, I think that is the great thing, really, because people don't realize the vast improvement in every single department from last season. Last season, we had to play our very best every game just to get anything. This season, we don't have to now because we're well drilled. We have the right players who bring the right things to the team. Thiago Silva, one of the most important signings, because we can finally start attacks from deep, which we couldn't do before. And N'Golo Kante being fully fit, we can finally play 4-3-3, which is Lampard's go-to formation, which he hasn't been able to do because Jorginho's not good enough off the ball defensively. Kova's even worse off the ball defensively. And, you know, you can't implement and work on those principles. And, you know, the fact that the signings we made, and this is obviously taking cues from Liverpool too, who, you know, showed if you sign the right players that complement what you're doing, sometimes you don't have to wait 3 months for them to get acclimatized. They can just do it instantly. I think Salah proved that when he first signed for them. People were surprised that he did so well. But I was thinking, you know what, you haven't been seeing what he's doing in Italy and just how he plays the game in general. So, you know, for me, these are like the principles for success. This is how you like create that winning mentality. And, you know, we finally had a manager long term who stopped fighting with the boards, worked alongside them, that started incorporating what we had at this club, which was the academy, to, you know, take those principles into the first team. And actually the key to success now is that we can produce players from our academy, and for players we don't have, we can buy the very best, as we proved this summer, to keep that momentum going. So, you know, I look at clubs like Barca, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. For me, they're like legacy clubs. These, every decade, they're constantly challenging for something and they're winning something. And it's very hard to do that in football. Historically, I mean, look at great teams, even like Sheffield United, to think that you could win, you know, European Cups, and then, you know, since then, to not take off and become like that powerhouse. So
that's the thing, though, isn't it? Because it's kind of like what we were saying before, and it's like every club, it has that little transition year. You can do that in Spain because there's only frigging 2 of them challenging every year. You have a transition year in the Premier League, and by the way, you know, we're not even getting to that stage yet. We're only just getting good. We've been in the Premier League for years and years, so we're not even got to a transition stage yet. But you know, you have a transition year. I've watched you have a transition years and someone capitalise. That's kind of it. Barcelona's, your Juventus's, Bayern Munich's, doesn't matter for them. They'll just win the league by 15 less points than they did the year before, and go back the next season to 30 points.
Exactly. And I think that's, for me, to really become that pinnacle club, like the real big boys, you need to, you know, have that type of legacy. So I think the key to do that is to have a long-term philosophy that you believe in, that you cultivate, and that you adapt as the times go on, but you still keep that core. And I think now, the first time ever, it seems like that is what's finally happening here at this club. Lampard's bringing that. He's got his team. We've got the academy. Everything is aligned perfectly at the right time. And yeah, honestly, I really feel like this next 10 years is going to be massive at Chelsea.
I must say, I'm a lot more concerned about Chelsea at the moment than I was before hearing that. It was really, really well put how it is something being built at Chelsea. It's not a short-term thing. And, as Chris was saying, it's concerning how quickly these players have gelled together. And Chelsea are looking at a real force this season. And look, I'm going to have to sit here and say, I do think in terms of squad depth and things like that, I think Tottenham have the best squad in the league this season, and the general response to that in the past has been that's it. That's the one. That's the one.
I think it's my time to go now, so it was great to see you guys.
I mean, in terms of starting 11, there are teams out there who are better than Spurs. I'm not going to deny that. But you've seen Liverpool earlier on in the season.
So your starting 11 isn't as good as others, but then you've got a stronger squad as others.
In terms of squad depth, yeah, because we've seen Liverpool. They picked up a few injuries.
Surely that's a kind of a natural contradiction.
No, I think squad depth in terms of if we do lose a player, there are players there who can step in. Whereas City, very very early on in the season, Pep Guardiola said they only had 13 fit players, and I know it's a bit of mind games.
They're all back now, so
yeah, no, I know that.
We're level on points with you, and 9 of ours lads are out.
Oh no, I know that. Look. I understand why that has been the reaction in the past, but there are players in Tottenham squad like Giovanni Lo Celso, Gareth Bale, who can't even get into our starting 11, who are extremely, extremely talented footballers. I think you can make 2 starting 11s for Spurs from the players that we do have available. We played a second string team against Chelsea in the Cup. I know Chelsea rotated a bit as well, but we managed to beat them in there. And we've added depth to the positions that we've really, really struggled in. We haven't had a backup striker for so long, and we've managed to get Vinicius in there. We've brought in one younger centre-back who played against Chelsea at the weekend, had a bit of an iffy start, but definitely you can see is a very quality player. We've got 2 midfields in there. We're starting Højbjerg, Sissoko and Ndombele in there, but we do have a lot of rotation possible with the players that are in that squad. And I think that's even more impressive when you look at the fact that we had a lot of passengers in that squad for so long. With the likes of Dele Alli, we had Christian Eriksen, we had Harry Winks, we had Danny Rose, and Mourinho has come in and he's managed to get them out of the team. And we were under Pochettino, especially in a position where no matter how poorly they played, we still kind of needed to put them in that starting 11. But Mourinho's come in and he's made some really, really intelligent signings. I think Joe Hart has been a very underrated signing. He's not going to do much on the pitch, but when he is there, we can hear the impact he's having on the players around him. And we've heard in interviews just how much he is affecting players there. I think Højbjerg was an absolutely sensational signing. He's been one of our best players this season. A lot of people see him as a kind of a midfield enforcer, as a destroyer, but he's shown that he is just as good on the ball. He's been involved, I think 75% of our goals this season have come from a Højbjerg pass, interception or tackle, which is an absolutely ridiculous stat. And the one main thing that Jose Mourinho has done is he's made the link up between Kane and Son better and more dangerous than it's ever been. And Pochettino for so long was trying to fine tune that. He was trying to find out the best way to use these 2 players together. But I think I'm not going to put it down to Daniel Levy in terms of bringing Jose Mourinho in, but I think it's just worked out well that we've brought in one of the best counter-attacking managers that there is. Look at that counter-attacking team he built at Real Madrid. He went on and managed to win the league there, which is something that Madrid don't do too often, but he's managed to find the perfect combination. And I'd even include Ndombele in there and make it a trio where you have Harry Kane dropping deep, you've Ndombele picking up space between the lines, and Son and whoever the other winger is running past, running in behind. And it's worked absolutely outstanding for us. I don't think any of us ever thought we'd go and see Tottenham score 6 at Old Trafford, even though it was such a weak Manchester United team. And if you're looking at that squad, barring perhaps Harry Kane and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, and to an extent Son as well, for every player that is in there, if they get injured, there is a player who can step in and replace them, not to the same quality, not to the same degree, but players who can come in and do a job in there. If we lose Sergio Reguilon, we've Ben Davis, who's been a Premier League left back for quite a while. We've 2 good solid right backs in Doherty and Aurier. I've already mentioned the midfield and our attacking options. We have Bergwijn, we've Lucas.
I agree about Aurier. I think he's a bit daft personally, but so that's, I guess it's perception, isn't it though? Because Vinicius, for example, he's only played 1 Premier League game, so can we really say he's as good a backup striker as what us guys have got yet? Is that a fair comment?
I think Tottenham are a good team and Mourinho's brilliant. But I think compared to the other 3 squads, I don't think the squad's as good as Chelsea's. I don't think the squad's as good as City's.
They haven't proven it yet, in my opinion, to make that claim. You can write down players on paper, but they have to obviously play it and prove it. And we're only a few games into the season where some of these players have just joined. So we don't even know how Reguilon's going to be playing in 10 games from now or whatever. as much as I do think Spurs have improved, I just think you're jumping the gun there, man, personally, big time, because you just don't know where you're going to be in 15 games. You don't know if any of these new players are going to drop off, or if Vinicius will end up being just another. What was the other guy you had?
Roberto Soldado or something.
Yeah, Soldado, or the Theo guy. What's he called? The other striker. I forgot his name.
Vincent Janssen, is it?
Vincent Janssen, you don't know if it's going to be another him, so you just have to wait firstly. I mean, you could be right. We could all go back in a few minutes ago. Do you know what? Matt was spot on and we were all nonsense. But everything just saying you've got a stronger squad than, especially City and Liverpool, with all due respect to Chelsea as well, two teams have literally, I mean, Laporte, Ake and people Zinchenko were even on our bench the other day, these kind of players. And it's just, it feels a step too early to say that for me personally. Sorry.
I do understand what Matt's saying, though. I think, when you assess the depth, I mean, up front, they've got Vinicius Kane, they've got, Lucas, experience at PSG, Bergwijn, one of the best Eredivisie wingers for how many years, with Bale and Son. And then in midfield, it's a strong one where if there's an injury there, Sissoko can come through to literally keep that momentum going. And if anything, it tells you everything about how these squads are getting developed now, because but maybe back in the day you have your tier 1 team and then your tier 2 team, but now it feels like it's just about having an excellent squad where any player can be involved at any time when it's needed. So looking at that,
maybe they get maybe the difference between your first and second choice players is maybe smaller than some other teams, but is the overall quality of the individuals as high as others? Maybe
we are top of the table.
And I think what is interesting now is that because I find the squads are so strong. I have so much depth now with all the big teams. I think City got depth, Liverpool have depth, Spurs, so many clubs do that. Those lines are getting even smaller and smaller. So it really comes down to how is the manager going to step into create that little distance, get those 3 points. Things are becoming a lot tighter, and to be honest, I'm quite excited about this Premier League season just to see, because for me, ultimately, I'm one of those guys where I like competition sometimes. You know what I mean? And it's like is it as exciting when you're you've got a 30-point lead over the second place when you just won the league 3 months ago? I mean, of course it is. I mean, it was
pretty exciting. It was definitely better than the year before when when I was watching not only Liverpool games every week but City games and them ruining my mood every week. It was much better than the year before.
Yeah, of course. But I think ideally in a perfect role for me, I like to see who's going to come out. Who's after all this slugfest throughout the entire season, who's going to be that number one at the end. And I think right now, there's many teams in good places. I think there's a few teams that are going to pick up as time goes on, and it's going to be very tight. So even with what I'm seeing now, I still think maybe a few more weeks to go into the season, then we'll start to get stronger patterns about, okay, this is how the season's starting to shape up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're 10 games in, aren't we, at the moment? It's dead early. On Tottenham, though, I thought Mourinho was done. But, after he left Manchester United, really did. I'm still not sure whether he isn't, but I do feel that this season is the perfect season for Mourinho, in that because the scores are all a little bit mad and everything else, and he's so good at doing what he does. And he's now found, and Paul said this to me, and I'm going to take his point here because I agree with him, is that, he's found that Drogba replacements, and somehow it's Harry Kane, a player who doesn't really look like Drogba, who doesn't really play like Drogba, but holds the ball up, is strong, is now feeding in the likes of Son. He seems to have just got the old band back together, if you know what I mean. Every piece seems to be working. And in this league today, right now, his side just seems to be perfectly set up, whereas I thought we were getting away from Mourinho ball. And yet, at the start of the season, in the pandemic, no crowds, it was like it just perfectly played into his hands.
I think for me, as a City fan, by the way, sorry, because I mean, obviously you beat us 2-0, bad play. I mean, the thing is, City fans didn't feel Spurs play well. They felt City played badly, which is always the way, but literally you had 4 shots and we had 22, and we kind of just one of those things where we felt like we fucked ourselves over there, and there was obviously that questionable moment as well with the goal. Was it handball? Was it not? I mean, I feel like Spurs were good. It fucking wasn't. But anyway, the goal is that... But anyway, what I was going to say is largely Spurs, you were good in a kind of very Mourinho defensive kind of way, but whether that will work over 38 games this season, he's yet to be, obviously, literally yet to be proven.
I agree with that.
I think in general, like, I don't think you were impressive against us. I think you did well in a very kind of counter-attacky kind of. You played like a mid-table side, waiting for a moment of quality, and we had a bit of bad defending. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm saying I think like I fear Liverpool. I fear Liverpool when we play them. I expect more from that, and I think early on in the season that will work, but you're going to have to be a little bit better than that throughout the season, I reckon, because you've got 28 more games left of the season, and I still don't think City and Liverpool and whatever haven't hit their best form yet. So I feel like basically, as good as the Spurs are, I'm just revising a bit of caution, I reckon, because I don't think they've been as good as maybe you think they have been. Maybe I'm wrong there, but like I think they've got a lot more to do if they're going to stay up there towards the end of the season. Could be wrong.
Yeah, look, I think we could sit here all day long and argue all these, but I'm just a bit conscious of time now. I just want to get one final word from all of you. First of all, Chris, why do you think Liverpool will win the league this season?
Because at some point, we're going to have to get some players back who play in the first team. And when we do, I think we'll be all right. And listen, for me, Liverpool were in a really lucky situation in some ways. We didn't want to go out of the Champions League, but not going over there and doing what City and Manchester United and all them had to do and play those extra games gave us a little bit more time off. And I think we had a little bit easier end to the season, not as much pressure on us because of the points gap and stuff. Don't think we probably worked quite as hard. I thought we'd have been better situation fitness-wise than we are in, but I think, we've got to make a signing in January and he's got to settle in if we're to win the league. And I trust Liverpool to do that because from the last sort of 3 years, we've really bought well, and the people have settled in pretty quickly. So I don't think it's going to be dead easy, but I do think there's going to be a little bit of a gap.
Stephen, why will City regain the title?
I don't think we will. I think it's going to be Spurs now. I actually probably won't think it'll be Liverpool, unfortunately. But the reasons why City could win the league, I'm hoping for a refocused Guardiola. I think we've had a pretty poor start to the season, and to be honest, if we win our game in hand, we're still right up there anyway. So I do think it's one of those things where maybe we've had our bad patch, and other teams maybe haven't had it yet. So I think City probably have got, out of all the teams here currently, City have got the most to improve. We fixed our defence. We've had 6 clean sheets in the last 8 games. I think we've started to create chances again. We weren't creating anything before, but we have started to create chances again. So I think City's room for improvement is probably bigger than the other sides at the moment. And I think Guardiola's got his angriness back. And I think we'll see, hopefully, it could be wrong, but I think City have a lot to prove to themselves and to the manager. And I think hopefully our worst bits are behind us as well. So that's why hopefully Man City will win the league.
NiiNii, what's it going to take for Lampard to have his first Premier League as a manager?
To be honest, I just think it's because we're dark horses. No one really knows the good work that's been happening. No one's, been comparing the improvements from last season to this season. Every game we played this season has been on a different level to last season against every opponent. And now that we have a team that has goals, now, most importantly, we now have to keep clean sheets. Now we can go toe-to-toe physically against teams that want to be physical and put up that fight. Lampard has tailored a squad that is ready for all challenges in football right now. We have different teams we can use for different games. We've got different lineups of players we can turn towards, and they're all young, they're all improving, they're all getting better. And as the season goes on, they're only going to grow and grow as that happens. And on top of that, I think Lampard's a great tactician that knows what to do against most teams. And I think that combining all these elements together, I feel very, very optimistic that we could secure the league as long as things are in our favour and no more evil injuries affect us anymore. Then I think we're good.
Right, and just to end it off, I think Spurs. I think we can lift the Premier League this season, and the main reason it has to be Jose Mourinho. Everyone has talked about how Spurs, we always Spurs it up, this whole Spursy thing. I think eventually that does have to come to an end, and there's no better manager to do that than Jose Mourinho. And Spurs, we thrive as underdogs, and it does. I don't understand it, but for some reason we are still the major underdog. I think we will live off that very well. I know Jose Mourinho was talking down our chance of the title this season, but it's just part of all of his mind games. I've already spoken about how tactically he's been brilliant. Stephen, you touched on City playing poorly. against us. I think a lot of that was down to Mourinho knowing where to target you in terms of our defensive structure. I think he really exploited João Cancelo stepping up into that double pivot. We cut off the balls wide when you did try and get Bernardo Silva and De Bruyne out there. And I think Mourinho just has the ability to out-tactic every manager that there is in the Premier League at the moment. Harry Kane hitting the form of his life, Son hitting the form of his life. I think we could go under the radar quite a bit this season. And I really think, a lot of things are coming together for us. And we went into games against City and Chelsea, third in the Premier League table, and we came out at the top. And the big 6 games have been the ones that we struggled with so much in the last couple of seasons. So I think if we can turn that around, I don't see any reason why we can't be right up in there with a shout. But look, at the end of the day, only one of us can win it. We'll be waiting around a long time in order to find that out. But Chris, Stephen, NiiNii, it's been an absolute pleasure having all of you on today. I really, really do appreciate you sparing your time to have this debate. To those who are watching, thank you very much who have watched, especially those of you who've made it through to the end. If you have enjoyed it, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe below and click join if you're interested in becoming a member. I'll leave all the socials for these lads down in the description as well. So I tell you to go and check them all out as well. As always, thanks for watching.